Hello and welcome to Unlimited Realities. I'm your host, Lisa Zimmer, and today I'm going to be talking about a personal experience, my near death experience. But I'm going to talk about some aspects that I didn't talk about in the first podcast I did on this because, quite honestly, near death experiences and any type of unidentified flying object or unidentified aerial phenomenon is often disputed, discredited, judged, looked to be a wrong story, a lied story, a fabricated story versus an actual event, an experience, something somebody experienced. Now, that said, I've always been a believer of UFOs, okay? There are some parallels between my near-death experience and some UFO, UAP stories that I've heard from other people. So, in my desire to bring some insight about what I've discovered and what information that I believe is credible through resources that government agencies like Air Force pilots and Navy and Army bases, Army servicemen and civilians have offered both experiences and proof, visible proof, what they could catch, what they could gather for others to view. Now, of course, everything is always open and subject to criticism, to be disputed, to be accepted or believed, as well as discredited. So I'm a believer. I've had my own experiences. Anybody can say anything they want to say about my personal experiences, and it does not take away from the fact that I had these experiences. Do you understand? So you can try to discredit what I say. However, I had these experiences, so you can't take that away from me, right? So today, I'm not going to get into the UFO experiences, but I am going to talk a little bit about more specifically about my near-death experience because there are some parallels. And I didn't get into them before because they sound pretty far out there, quite honestly. But again, this was my near-death experience. So I'm going to start from the beginning, take you through my experience of what happened. Um, I've only told a handful of people my story. In fact, nobody knows my entire story. Here on this podcast is the most thorough accounting that I've ever given, other than when it first happened. And mainly because I carried a lot of shame because the experience was induced from a drug overdose, a cocaine overdose at 18 years old that I had. And I think I carried that shame, discrediting it myself even, until my own experiences continued to evolve as I have aged. I've had more experiences aligning with this near-death experience. That's only brought me more information. So my near-death experience happened like this. I was 18 years old, and I was with two people that I knew, and we were partying. And my threshold was pretty unusual at that time. And So I apparently took a dose that was too much, and I went into convulsion fits of where I turned purple, my heart stopped, I stopped breathing. I think it was just a few seconds. I really don't know how long, but my experience felt like it was a day, quite honestly. So it started as this. The first sensation or realization of experience that I had, that I could recall when I awoke, was I started to feel my body lift. Okay, I started to feel a sensation of lifting of my body. And as I started to feel my body lifting, I started to see myself lift from the world, the earth, the situation, the scene that I was in. Okay. And as I was drifting upward, there were what we can term today that looked like orbs, okay, like colorful lights, round circular orbs, okay. And these orbs that went up with me, and I did feel like I was going up in kind of like a cylinder, kind of like when you put your money in the bank cylinder in the drive-through, that kind of, that's kind of how I felt. It wasn't that whoosh, immediate swooshing like I was, out of control and whisking through space. No, it was just a knowing of going, upward. And I know a lot of my explanation is going to sound juvenile because when I'm talking to you on this podcast, this is live and raw. I haven't written anything out. I'm not, going by a script or anything. This is all me, off my own knowing and experience. Very different from when I do interviews and I read the book and I write my own questions. So you've got me all in this vulnerability. So as I'm moving upward, and I was moving upward, the sensation was an upward feeling. There were these orbs, in colorful orbs, okay, blues and pinks and oranges and yellows. And I will say, as you have probably heard if you followed this topic before, the colors were extraordinary. They were of no coloring I've ever seen on this earth, almost translucent and sparkly within the color itself. So it was as if it was blue, however, it was like a little turquoise and sparkle and translucent all rolled up into one, and just this brilliance of brightness. The energy of these lights was very warming and comforting. I didn't have a knowing of an essence, like a being with these orbs, but it was a comforting feeling. Okay. I did feel an awareness with that. Okay. I did feel some awareness with the orb energy as I was moving upward. And as I'm moving upward, I end at this, what can only be described as what my consciousness must have created in the moment, was a visual of a floating platform. And it was just this floating platform. It was just this platform, like as if you were on a stage, a large stage, rectangular, squarish, probably more rectangular in shape, platform. And it was large because on this platform was a semicircle of 13 beings. Now, I've pondered this piece, 13, because 13 to me is an occult number, okay? And we've been conditioned in our upbringings many times, many of us have anyway, that 13 is an occult, and the occult is scary, and the occult is bad, and the occult is black arts. And yes, I can't disagree with that, but within the occult energy, there is an essence of connection, and it's not the occult energy as it is divine energy. Okay, so you can't have one without the other. There are polar opposites and duality throughout our world, and the key here is to bring our balance within this. Okay, the key of bringing balance in is to increase our frequency of love. And I do believe that our species, the human species, is unique in its ability to have love and compassion. And so when we're tested upon that frequency, it is, we are tested within our soul. But I digress. I want to get back onto the platform of 13 energies, beings. So it was like a semicircle. They were before me, standing before me, and to my right was, like, I would have to say it's my guardian angel. Okay, because I did not see anything, but I knew I was being intuitively communicated with. Okay, with and the presence was to my right. I did not see myself in this. I saw 13 hooded, cloaked beings before me in a semicircle, standing. And they were cloaked in what I can only describe as what looked like a dark brown burlap, kind of a monk cloak looking robe and hood. Okay, I did not see faces. The one in the middle walked towards me, and there was no verbal communication. All communication was telepathic, which I'm sure you've heard this before, which again is why we need to increase our intuitive awareness. Again, I digress, going back to my story. So I have these 13 beings in front of me, and I'm posing the question of, why am I here? What is this? What's going on? And the person being in the middle, I can't call it a person because it was a being. It was it was a spirit, if you will. Walked towards me out of the semicircle with a book, and on the spine of the book, a white book. It was a white book. I believe on this, the spine was white, that I'm recalling, but one word was on it in capital letters, very plainly. Wisdom was on the spine of the book. And then I was taken over to the left upper corner of this platform. So it would be like the northwest corner of the platform. And I'm being shown again telepathically to look outward from this platform. And if I was to look outward on this platform, I was literally seeing the universe, or my limited perception of what I could see within the universe of my view. And what I saw was what could be described as grid paper. Like if you're taking a math class and you get grid paper and you're doing your equations on grid paper, it was this enormous grid. And the grid was outstretched as far as my eye could see. And I could see that it stretched out as the universe upon universe upon universe. It stretched upon my imagination, my ability to comprehend the magnitude of this. And as I'm receiving this grid of energy of connectedness, is what came to me. Okay, this grid represented in my consciousness at that time a connectedness. And I immediately, as soon as I got that awareness of connectedness, I got the awareness and the emotional, overwhelming feeling of, we are all one. And I heard, we are all one. And I said at that time, this is what it means. We are all one. And with that, I was downloaded with a lot of information, some and a lot I've missed and was not able to retain and transfer over into this reality. Some information has come back to me over the years through deep meditations, and I have recalled it from this experience. But I do still know that there's much that I missed. I do believe I was shown instances of experiences, futuristic experiences that was to come, because I do remember explosions. I'm not sure if that explosion was 9/11 or wars, but I was shown explosions, and I do recall that. The one thing that I was told, intuitively told, was how we are all one. And how we are all one is through our DNA. And I was shown the DNA strand. And I was shown how multiple DNA frequencies, shall we call them, have been masterfully aligned to create each and every one of us, coming from an original source, ultimately being a part of the whole, connecting all of us as one to the Supreme Source. In that knowing, I was also shown a binary code, and I didn't understand it at the time. I mean, I knew it was binary code, but I didn't understand what I was being shown. I believe now that was being shown to me as a form of communicative exchange, of transcending our world through others. But rudiment, nonetheless, we have to start somewhere. Again, this is my interpretation of the information that I was shown. It was all very palpable. It stayed with me weeks. An energy stayed with me weeks. I could feel a shift within my body. My awareness, my perception, my consciousness, my how I saw things, how I felt things. My intuition increased significantly, immediately. I knew things and felt things that I hadn't prior as well to that experience. Let's see. How else did things change from that near-death experience for me? Well, I knew without a doubt that we were much more than what we were told throughout any religion. I believe that every religion has a truth in it, but I believe we have to kind of sew up all the religions to kind of get the whole truth, because to me it feels like it's fragmented. It feels like there are truths scattered around our world, and that we really need to search our world to find these gems of wisdom, to gather up the universal truths. And I do believe that, because I believe that there are universal truths woven within all of our religions, and we've segregated through our cultures these religions, which is fine because we resonate, right, with what's familiar and what's comfortable. So it makes sense to create a culture that's going to resonate within your belief system, within your culture, okay? But what we hadn't prepared for thousands of years ago was the crossovers, the sharings, the diversities, the blending of diversities, the sharing of knowledge. And so here we are in the 21st century, and we have at our hands, a lot of history we can get to pretty quickly. We have to be really discerning about the information so we don't tap into complete conspiracy theories and, discredit truth. We have to look and relook and research and re-examine and re-critique information to get to the truth. I did say my podcasts are raw. Well, they're so raw that my dog's going to have to go chase a little bird here. So you might even get a little dog bark once in a while. But I do believe we are on the verge of something here right now. And Spirit tends to guide me on a cutting edge of things. And I've been bored for a bit. Everything I've done, and I'm seeing repeated time and time again. So it's like, it doesn't excite me to be one of the thousands or hundreds or millions of doing the same old. It just doesn't. I have to be exploring something that's a little bit more to bring you more awareness, insight, compassion, inspiration. And so this is inspiration to me. UFOs, UAPs do not scare me. Okay. I was raised with a father who had a very strong, adamant, and this is a man who's real conservative. Okay. Um, you know, you definitely towed the line. All right. He was a POW. Need I say more? So this was a guy that had a lot of respect. People respected him. He was, and he was respectable. He was desiring of being respected. He was an honorable person, and he wasn't an idiot. And he never talked about it except to like me or like maybe a few family members, but mainly me. But I believe something happened or he experienced something while he was in service, whether it was in the Korean War or World War II. But and it could have been even before that. I don't know. But he was an adamant believer of UFOs. Loved Star Trek. Almost studied Star Trek, quite honestly. And, he knew that if he talked about it, people would think, he was out there. And so it wasn't something that he would talk about, but it was a knowing. And, you have to understand, I was also raised by my very Catholic mother. So I had half of my Catholicism and half of my ufology, okay, in my being. And so, I'm unraveling these aspects because I recognize where we have utilized stories in the Bible where Ezekiel even is talking about a spaceship, and we've watered it down. We've made it to be incredulous. We've made it to be extraordinary, only happening to people then. Well, the fact is, we are a dumbed down society. And it's not just because we're in the 21st century. We had more genius thousands of years ago in our connection with ourselves and the beyond. Let's just say that's another podcast. And so now we're becoming more aware. We've been in what's called a 3D dimensional reality, which we see and experience things that we feel, we can touch, we can smell, we can taste. However, now we're moving into what we excel to be a 5th dimensional energy, but we're not there. So we're moving into our 4th dimensional place. And in that 4th dimensional place, we're becoming much more aware and sensitive to frequency and energy. And in that energy is information. And so how we perceive that information and bring that information back is important. Because I don't know about you, but a good half, solid half of the people who report about UFOs have been touched. Okay, I don't know if they were touched prior to the experience or the experience left them in a state of touchedness. But quite frankly, I have a very strong discerning nature about myself, and I will call BS out. I watch a lot of these tellings and experiences that people have experienced. And I watch it with a compassion because I know that it's hard to tell these stories. I know from my own experience, near-death experiences or UFO experiences. But a lot of people who tell their stories, come off a little whack. They just show up a little like, oh yeah, I could understand you did see a UFO and purple cows as well. So, and then, you'll hear the Air Force pilot or the farmer who was just like, didn't want to talk about it. And these experiences are palpable. You feel them. You know these people are telling truth. You know there's no BS here. You know this was an experience these people had felt, had. And sure, it may be unbelievable, but there's a lot in our world that we do not have an explanation for, simply because that's not talked about, simply because it's just passed off as one of those weird experiences, or yeah, Uncle Charlie's touched. Okay. However, not everybody's touched. Not everybody who are having these experiences have, you know, we're not all deficient in our capacities, is what I'm trying to say. And so I think there's a little bit more credence we need to give one another when someone is talking about this, because it's really brave to talk about it. I mean, I know I'm being critiqued in what I'm sharing here on the podcast because it's unconventional. I know that I'm stepping outside the confines of pure optimism and positivity. But these are my experiences, and I know them to be true. I don't dispute them. You can discredit me or try to as much as you need to for yourself, but it doesn't take away the fact that this did happen to me, and it has changed and evolved me as well. So my near-death experience parallels some of my UFO experiences, and I'm going to talk about that next in the next podcast. But one thing I do want to say about near-death experiences is many people will come away with a near-death experience with a new heightened sense of self, or a sense of awareness, intuition, a sense of knowledge or interest. They might pick up an instrument. They might do something they've never done before, have a new talent. Many things transform the soul during a near-death experience. Now, that was my most significant near-death experience. I have had two others. Were not as significant as that one. I did not have the next phase. In fact, I had a near-death experience when I was giving birth to one of my children, and I delivered the baby, and I talked about this before, and they had thought that they had delivered the entire placenta and had not, and I was bleeding internally. And so all of a sudden I started to go out, and I coded, and they rushed me in. And I remember my viewing this from the ceiling, looking down, and a nurse threw herself across my body and kept doing that, pounding me, pounding me, pounding me, until they could expel the rest of the placenta that had broken off. Apparently, I had like twice the size placenta from a normal size placenta. And I watched that all happen and went back into my body. So I did not transit, shall we say. I did not experience an evolution going into another state, but I did watch that. And then another time I started to feel myself going into a near-death experience, and I pulled myself out of it. That was interesting. But the one that was most significant is this one of moving upward with the orbs, being on a platform with the collective 13 beings, being brought over to the northwest corner of this platform and being shown the grid, discussing the DNA connection, the creation of the DNA, and the ability of how we are all one through our DNA and the creation. It was an informative piece. I was also shown visuals, and I do remember an explosion And I do remember it being a high building. So I do think that it was, I'm thinking it might have been a foretelling, but I can't say that it was because I didn't retain it in that context. It was just, a recalling. But I was shown different images that weren't pleasant, you know, about the world changing and shifting. A lot of it was the electronic boom, the technological boom, the emails, the computers. Now, mind you, when I was 18, I did not have a computer or a cell phone. So, emails, or I didn't even know what an email was. World Wide Web, nope, didn't know what that was either. I was 30 before I had my first computer, and I was the first person I knew who had a computer. So, my husband and I at the time. So, that was, that piece. Um, and that was like, that was 12 years later. So, we're talking about um, the 80s, okay? And then we're talking about the 90s. So we're talking about a decade and a half from this experience to when computers actually came out. And it was, I was not, very well could have been the binary code I was being shown in regard to the computers in the electronic age. But what I got from that more was a way of communication with others in the universe. Um, and again, these are my interpretations of coming away from it with, of what I experience it to be. Someone else could have had the same experience and had a different perception or take from it, but this is mine. The one things that I'm not disputing or I'm not questioning is the absolute informational facts that I was parlayed intuitively from this intelligence, this higher source of awareness that was gifting me this awareness because it wasn't coming from me. And there was definitely an awareness of a being and 13 beings. Um, I wasn't alone. I was aware of that. And I can't say that it was Christ talking to me, but I will say that I was very aware of the Christ love consciousness while this was happening. So I always go back to that and kind of reevaluate and, you know, pick my own brain on it because I remember the sensation and awareness of the overwhelming feeling of love and oneness for um, the unity of the collective consciousness, all beings. And in that, I recognized the Christ consciousness love. And it increased like instantaneously for me in that moment, knowingly in my soul, bringing it back into my awareness when I awoke and came to consciousness. So, in that, my intuition definitely increased. And when I am in that state of knowing, my intuition is definitely a much more fluid accuracy than when I'm in a doubtful, questionable state of mind, which happens to all of us. We're human, right? We cannot grow if we do not challenge ourselves. So, and I tend to challenge me well. So I'm going to end there on my near-death experience. I really appreciate all of you, whoever is listening. Thank you. I hope it brings some clarity and hopefully some comfort and insight to you. We do not die. I do not believe there is a death because I do not believe our consciousness ever dies. I believe our consciousness lives on. It lives on because it was created in love. And in that love vibration, it can never die. And the body is a limited structure to be contained as we walk upon the earth, but the spirit does not die. And then that spirit has choice. And we'll get into that some more in another podcast. Thank you for joining me. God bless you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Enjoy your holidays. Stay blessed. God bless.